in the criminal world, I've never seen that.
Right.
In the civil world, yeah.
Yeah,
For instance, in the civil,
yeah.
I give him an ultimatum, you have to either prove to me this is lawfully there, or move it within 60 days, or 90 days, or whatever. If you do not, we will remove it from the property and file some mechanics lien against the title. At some point, if the property sells, we collect that money. So it's a blemish.
Okay.
It shows it's a blemish on the title.
Well, I would like to have an abatement account. The only thing and I've worked on this abatement accounts before. In fact, we were building one in Oroville to deal with properties. Is that this is one case, and you're acting on it. It's not the only one, is it?
Well, the second one on the list, what I've done is kind of bracket what I would argue are two
Right.
extremes, potential extremes in terms of expense, and kind of ironically, in some respect. I guess depending upon your perspective, this cabin sitting on piers in what is arguably the floodplain, fairly close to the river, poses some potential problems should it actually come off those piers. And go down the creek in high water, you have the potential for all sorts of mischief downstream, getting in the bridge abutments and things like that. The other one is our salvage yard
Okay.
up on 97.
Not to complicate that one, so, on this abatement, that project, because it's a new house, doesn't have any asbestos in it, right?
And there's one,
Doesn't have any asbestos or anything like that in it. We could essentially burn it down, although I don't know if that would.
I'm not sure that would pass their quality standard, but it's a demolition. You can certainly just start.
Yeah. Do we have, and there's no option that the county can do the work?
Oh, I don't know that that's the case.
It's just,
I mean, depending upon how we structure it. Public work.
yeah, I know. Just brainstorming this stuff here, because we need to act on it.
Well, I mean,
We
eventually.
need to act on, I'm saying we need to act on it.
I think we need to do something.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll get to that point here in just a moment. If nothing else, we have a legitimate complaint by another party in the neighborhood. We have actually given a landowner every opportunity to come into complaint.
So he hasn't been fined yet or anything?
No.
Okay.
To Dave's point, to now take it from where we are to the criminal world, I need to do more investigation.
Sure. What are the one is that you don't have a flood elevation certificate?
Right. We now have the flood elevation, FEMA did the detailed analysis, actually have their base flood elevation.
And that's the liar.
Well, no, that's, FEMA will actually go through and do their analysis.
So to build there, the person has to have a flood elevation certificate.
Well, this is a little bit different.
Okay.
If it were anywhere else in a 100-year floodplain,
Yeah.
he would have to show that the bottom
Was 1 foot.
was 1 foot above base flood elevation,
Right.
the lowest habitable floor.
Yep.
And you can still build. You have to do
Right.
your knockout foundation, your flood proofing, all that kind of stuff. So he could build here according to FEMA.
Mhm.
He can't build here according to your zone code. Because the zone code prohibits the building of any structure for residential use in the 100-year floodplain. So what he would have to show is the property is not in the 100-year floodplain.
Right.
He'd actually have to show that the building site is elevated above the 100-year floodplain. But we have that, FEMA's now given us that number. He has an unsigned statement from an engineer that shows it to be above that level. We don't have a stamp, we don't have an elevation.
You have to have an elevation, right? So I'm wondering if just it would be beneficial for us to just act on the one issue and go, you're being fined as of, if we have that in violation fee for every day, or, and then it's like, the bill is, the meter's going. We haven't gotten to that point yet. Can't we do that without anything further because he doesn't have a flood elevation permit?
If we, the cleanest charge would be the building permit. Get it out, period.
Right.
And you probably can't get one because of all these other challenges, but he does not have a building.
So under our building code provisions, would require you to have a building without a permit.
So theoretically, that is the charge that you're doing,
What is the amount of that charge? $250.
And does it bill after if you don't do anything
no,
about
no
it?
provisions for that.
So you're
That's why I was
fine.
hoping Dan would be here today, but he's gone today, so.
Well,
I'm not aware that there is, lost my word, not tiered fine, what am
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Progressive.
Accumulation.
Progressive fine.
Yeah.
Progressive fine, they call it. And maybe, you know, it's kind of a freewheeling discussion here, because as you know, I'm working on a new code enforcement section with varying levels of concern and cooperation, so.
So what?
So I'm gonna point something out,
Right.
and this is interesting, this, I always like analogies. So, there was a time when a trespassing fee was $150. So there were guys, they'd go out and shoot a huge deer and say, here's my $150, charge me for trespassing, or whatever. Well, when they started now taking away your hunting license, if it just goes away, then.
I call it a knock on the door.
And that is what Dan would tell you with the sandbag house. The fine was $250, the cost for the building permit was about $800. They went to court, pled guilty, paid the $250.
Well, that's
Theoretically, see, on a progressive fine, then theoretically, you could go back and every day,
Yeah.
the structure exists in violation of the building code, yeah, another $250, or, you know, whatever. Eventually, you get a big enough fine piled up, that eventually it's cost effective to move it. Now, that's assuming that if you don't pay that fine, you either go to jail on a failed to comply warrant, or at least there's some reporting against the title of property that appears as a blemish. You know, there's a number of different ways to make it more likely someone will do what they have to do to bring their property into compliance. Now this, you know, frankly, where we see this as much, well, there's a fair number of buildings out there that don't have permits, that we know they don't have permits, and we really haven't made a lot of effort to try to get them to get permits at this point, because of the past history. You have in your zone code, district use chart, a definition for salvage yard, which says if you have more than 5 dead vehicles on your property, you're a de facto salvage yard. You should have a conditional use permit. I know zoning works allowed. We send those letters out, and I think one, since I've been here, has actually applied for a CP. Another one moved a couple of cars, so now there's only 4 on the property. And then there's all sorts of them out there where there's lots and lots and lots and lots of cars. We're getting kind of the same. Do we eventually go in and clean it up? Put a title against the lien against the property? Do we change our code? Or do we come up with?
So what's
See, that's a little bit different because
What's the consequences for violating the building code?
The fine with the sandbag house is $250, I guess.
no, that's for not having a building permit. What he asked was, what's the violation for violating building code?
Well, to me, that's.
Not having a permit is a violation.
Well, okay.
Now, I'm looking at ordinance 2005-1, is that different than what we have on the books today? The building code,
I don't know the answer.
because that was adopted in '05. It's a $500 fine. Each day during which a violation continues, it shall be deemed a separate offense, and separate penalties may be assessed for each separate offense.
So for the building code.
This is an ordinance of the County of Okanogan expressly adopting state building and related codes, providing for enforcement by Okanogan County and repealing and adding certain provisions. And that is appears to be the remedy.
I don't know if that's current or not.
Okay,
What, is that an ordinance or?
that's the ordinance that adopts the building code.
Lane, could you look up what ordinance number is that?
That is 2005-1.
Can you look up 2005-1 and see if there's any subsequent repeals of 2005-1?
Trying to remember when the sandbag house gig was. It's been since I've been here. And that was '07. Where was it? Pardon? Where was it? In the Venus Valley. And I may not, but it was up in that part of the country. The penalties for your zone code violations, I believe, are in your zoning code. Now we we haven't adopted a bail schedule.
Yeah, it's determined to be a misdemeanor, and this is an and/or jail.
Say in the zone code, you can have them days, 90 days, 30 days, 9 days in jail.
This is 30.
Which is a whole nother discussion, because you have a possibility of jail time.
As it continues, is a separate offense, so, I mean, you could find yourself with 30 days in jail many times, or a $500 fine. So it is, what do you call it?
Progressive.
Yeah.
The challenge, as it was explained to me, the challenge we've always had with the jail time is that triggers your jury trial.
Right,
And the juries haven't convicted anybody.
it's, yeah, and so, if you don't do a jail time, if the judge doesn't, if that's what it really is,
The way
does that require a jury to determine whether or not you pay the fine?
the way I've written up the proposed code section,
I know that I'd rather have it as civil too, but we don't have that
it
now.
starts out as civil infraction with your progressive fine.
Right.
It doesn't bump to criminal unless you fail to pay your fine or fail to comply with the court order compliance plan. Move the house, give her your cars, whatever it might be. So, what I'm doing here is priming the pump.
Yeah, no, I got that part of it, and I'm already fully on board with civil infraction rather than having the misdemeanor.
Say with now a new prosecutor coming on board, new sheriff coming on board, you'll recall, we kind of tried to get everybody together before, getting to work on this, with varying levels of success. I'm gonna try it again. Unless I'm instructed otherwise, I'm going to continue on down this path.
Well, I would suggest you do. I don't know if there's any problem with that. A lot of jurisdictions are going to this civil infraction for the very reason we talked about, especially with the jury trial situation and much of other issues. But yeah, civil infraction seems to be the way to go. But right now, we don't have that.
Well, it's not clearly defined.
Yeah.
Part of the, and you have to forgive me in part, my world once upon a time was much simpler. I had a ticket book in my briefcase, you found the violation, you issued the citation, charged them into court, presented your case, life was good. Well, I don't have a ticket book anymore, so we have to work our way into court through another process.
Maybe we need to issue a ticket book.
Sue.
Yeah, really.
Now, the two ways, and this is why I want to bring the new sheriff, and I want to bring the new prosecutor. Two ways we can do this, is I can work it up to the point, so then I either get a deputy to go up and issue the civil infraction, or I get the prosecutor's office to issue it as a citation summons. Either way, unlimited. But I got to figure out what I have to do to make their comfort level sufficient that they'll go and hand them the ticket or else mail it. So I'd suggest all criminal things come off the books completely. Just take that away from the discussion. So it's fairly straightforward, civil infraction. I'll still have to figure out, you recall my last iteration, Dave thought it was too complicated in terms of the notification process and things like that. So I'm streamlining that a little bit. I haven't had a discussion with any of the sheriff's offices at this point, for a while now. So, civil infraction, come up with a fairly simple notification process with a tier of progressive fines. Somewhere between here, they get the notice of infraction, which lands them in the court system. Now, we have to figure out if you can create in your penalty schedule, your bail schedule, if you will. What you don't want is for them to just write the check, pay their, like, traffic ticket. You mail it in with the box check, yep, I did it, sorry. Pay your $250 or $500 or whatever dollar fine, and then you're done. So we have to make sure, I mean, I suppose theoretically, you could go back the next day, send them another notice, drop another, go through the whole process again, eventually issuing another citation, something like that. But somewhere in here, we need to build a process by which even if you pay the fine, you still got to do what you're supposed to do. Because that's what we're trying to get done. We're not punishing them for speeding, that was a one-time thing. We're trying to get them to fix it. That's the objective. The cabin shouldn't be there, the salvage yard needs to be cleaned up, the car's gotta go, whatever we do. So, any red flags going up here?
Nope, you talk procedure, you have to follow the procedure, it won't work anyway, so. Yeah. And then the, each day during which a violation continues can be a separate offense, that's the progressive side of it.
Now, this is where the whole abatement thing.
Mhm.
You get your infraction, you get your fine, you get your judge's order, all of that be cleaned up. But if they don't have any money to do it, they don't have it. So if we really, really, really want it done, then the only way to do it is to go do it. And put the lien against the property.
I never, but it's there.
Can you condemn the property and then sell it to pay for the?
The condition of the sale would be that.
I don't know the answer to that. I have, most of what I have seen, if not all of what I've seen, is a lien against the property. Eventually, the
In
property.
some cases, it cracks
Yes.
also, because you can file a lien, somebody can go sell the property.
Yes.
Because there's no correlation between the lien actually showing on the title.
Well, if you, theoretically, if you record it as an instrument against your title, it should show up during the title report. Now, where that falls on this one too, is if people are doing their transaction on contract or something.
Yes.
Where they haven't actually conveyed title,
Yeah.
it can slide through.
And then somebody else gets to deal with it.
Yeah, then so all of a sudden, you're at the end of your contract and you get the title and you're like, oh.
Sooner or later, it pops up.
You know that
If it
conditional
doesn't-
use permit on Lake Osage on the west side of the lake where the apartment complex was built, and then they sold the property, and then the person that bought the property ended up with the multifamily.
What's that, Sundown or something?
I can't remember, it was right there on the lake.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and so, I mean, essentially, I don't know whatever happened, but it seems like they came back to that seller.
Turned into quite a mess.
Okay, it did.
We had a hearing in front of the Board of Adjustment, because the new owner was doing something he thought he could do,
Right, exactly.
with no knowledge of the previous enforcement.
Okay.
I recognize both sides of the debate, but I realize there's expense involved. Not
Yes.
necessarily our expense, but expense to somebody. I do believe that
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
I guess it boils down to the civil, I mean, I agree with the civil infraction process. I would like to find out if you could actually do what Andy was mentioning, something along the
Well,
lines.
we just said,
well, we find that.
pursue this procedure. I know you're working on it.
Yeah.
Good. what are our options when it comes to these questions that we have?
Well, and there's this commissioner that's, up there somewhere, maybe he's not, this picture isn't here. But he used to always bug us in Oroville and, as the next commissioner and say, don't adopt rules you won't enforce.
What's that?
Don't adopt rules you were not gonna enforce.
Yeah, Higby?
Well,
Karen?
that's a
Excuse
fair
me,
question
one second.
too.
Do you have something?
I do. We have, we're doing our special payroll today, and we locked this budget, so I need to ask if I can do a budget agency over for $1,700 to get us through.
Yep.
Get us through the end of the year.
Yeah, this, I promise, I waited, I released it, letter process, the whole thing, so it was not coming back and forth, so I don't know how you normally do. Do you normally do resolutions for budget adjustments? Okay, I'm just gonna assume we pass it then, leave it with her.
Yep.
And then we'll just go move forward with payroll.
Yep.
All right, thank you so much. Sorry to
Thank
bother you.
No, that's fine. So can we just attach that to the consent agenda? No? Oh, it has a separate, okay. All right.
Sounds like it might be something
We
Do right away.
here, wait, we can come back to my discussion in a moment.
One thing about your discussion though is that on that particular, the house, the floodplain, no building permit issue, I think you ought to move forward to the point where at least whatever you got something to enforce without having to spend the money. At least, even if it's a $250 fine, is that the guy needs a message.
Yep.
And that message is, you built something without a building permit, you're fine. Now, we got some other violations that we're pursuing here.
Yep.
See, this is where I wanna get the new prosecutor on.
Yes.
Keeping in mind, again, back in my previous life was very simple.
Yep.
Had a citation,
Yes.
and went on like this. We can't do that. Your codes are not set up, neither Dan nor I have a limited commission or anything. We're not reserves with the sheriff's office or any of the different sorts of things that could theoretically be done.
Well, the last time I was involved in something like this, we had actually adopted the civil infraction. And in fact, the fine was issued by the police chief and so on and so forth, but they still didn't do it.
No.
Mm.
And that, say,
To your point, that's what we,
that's
Need
what
to
we're
do it
talking
every-
about.
Also, the next process was then that you do the work yourself and actually have your account place, and that's what we were building as an account. We've got $4,000. And you know those things cost, well, for the removal of the house that we were looking at, it was about $4,000 for, we lost it.
Oh, yeah.
We gave us an estimate.
Like I said, I'll get the new players involved in the discussion. I'll see if I can get some momentum under that coach.
so did you want to review the, I mean, when you said it too, or was it just, you
Oh,
used
yeah.
it for example?
Talking about the junkyard.
That's what I'm saying.
You were talking about the junkyard, did you?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm gonna use illustration.
CEP.
In many people's eyes, the cabin poses more potential for threat vulnerability. It's also likely the cheapest one to deal with. The salvage yard certainly is an eyesore, poses all sorts of other interesting challenges, violation of any of a number of elements of the conditional use permit, much more expensive
It affects,
to move. I mean, we're talking about some massive cleanup effort there. Under the banner of public health and safety, other than whatever on-site contamination might be taking place and whatnot, all that stuff could theoretically sit there as it does in many other spots in the county for all time. So, you know, what I've done with those two examples, one, they're both real-time examples. I'm gonna have to go out and deal with the Ellsford incident. I have to deal with the cabin, they're both live files right now. One relatively inexpensive, arguably more public health and safety overtones to it. The other one's gonna be much more expensive but probably draws a lot more attention if it's right on the 97 corner.
Is it, so, you have the option to revoke the conditional use permit?
That would be the step I would take first, is take him in front of the hearing examiner, and try to get the permit revoked, and then we'd have to come up with a compliance plan.
Is there any ramifications to, your scenic byway program?
Oh, yeah. That's what I got complaints about from that.
I understand,
I
but I mean,
mean,
is there any,
Oh.
is there anything that Perry can compound?
Oh, you mean add to it because it's scenic byway?
Yeah.
I don't know, you'd have to check with DOT. I mean, you know, they would, I don't know what, they've done one thing, they've signed it, right?
They, under the banner that the biggest problem he's had to deal with, there's other problems, but
Right.
people just dump stuff.
Right.
So DOT actually put up a sign on awful dumping, has a fine citation and everything else, so.
Well, you know, we could check with, it's a state designated scenic byway, so we could check with DOT and see, you know, if there's anything that maxes. Typically, it's on signage mostly. I never dealt with it on that, junkyard of the scenic byway. That's
I would-
worse than a sign if you.
I would guess, and it's only a guess at this point, DOT would probably be more likely to get involved if it's permitted. Usually what, their very first question is, are you compliant with the local law? Well, right now, he's in compliance with his own code, and then he has conditional use permit.
Well,
He's arguably out of the allowance of his conditional use permit, which is,
you know,
Another discussion.
you've talked to him, and he's put you off, I mean, in his own way, and so the revoke, conditional use permit really just generally means, look, we really do mean business with this. I mean, that, and I guess that's what I was getting at with the other building permit, even though it's a $250 fine, they may pay it or they might not pay it, but it's like, hey, you know,
More to come.
we need it,
Yeah.
so.
you know, and in this particular case, there's kind of an interesting discussion in some respects. When he had his equipment up there, he was doing better at keeping stuff cleaned up. He moved some of those piles up back, not as, well, he was, whether fast enough or not, I, the beholder, understood. But he was actually making some effort to clean things up. But he's not making a living in the scrap business, as nobody else is right now. So he had to take his equipment off to another job.
Right, and you can't control dump stuff on the side.
So he's off doing that, people are still dumping stuff out in front, but he doesn't have the gear to now pick it up and put it, and eventually he'll run out of room to put it. And then places stuff to the rafter. So, you know, back to the notion of culpability, mens rea actus reus. You have the guilty act, do you have a guilty mind, or is he doing the best he can to comply with the law?
Well, past history has a little bit to do with him. Past history also has. a
Oh,
little-
no, to be sure.
So, he's not making a living
Had to
doing
things in
the
the
scrap
old-
metal business.
Right.
He's, not able to even
Yeah.
stay there and
Sank over.
monitor the site, so if you pull a conditional use permit,
When it became a
I don't know how it
derelict,
hurts
it was
you.
a big, big.
The fact is, there's not a,
Abandoned it.
if there's a conditional use
Cleaned it
permit
up.
pulled,
So it's.
there's not a
Several-
scrap metal yard there by rights.
That's right.
Right, so, there's not a business there, so there's a sign on it that says, there is no scrap metal, it's closed. And anybody that comes along and dumps stuff there is illegal dumping.
Well, more illegal dumping.
Yeah, well, but I mean,
There'd be no.
their excuse isn't, oh, I stopped by the scrap metal yard and put it out front because they weren't there. But no, see, it's, there's no scrap metal yard, it's closed. We just need to take those steps to send the message to him and the public that you're illegal dumping, right? But, you know, how you can justify illegal dumping, but you wouldn't have the road and say there's a scrap metal yard, oh, they're not here, well, everybody else is putting their stuff here. It's like, no
Mostly
dumping, no
old-
scrap metal yard.
Mostly old lines.
Sure, and, you know, they want to get rid of it, because down here at the landfill, it costs you for the lines to get rid of it.
But
It's not
I'm
that
working.
much, that's
No,
the
it
thing. I mean, it's like, driven in there and I'm like, got a huge trailer full of garbage, and it's like $11.
Well, they plant you a big one.
Well, yeah, what is that, $5 for an appliance or something like
I
that?
don't know, like it's.
$5 or $10 plus weight.
I think we're gonna, well,
Depending on the appliance, so that the washers and dryers, the refrigerators are like 20.
Yeah, cause they have a refrigerator.
Yeah,
Yeah.
refrigerator.
So,
yeah, and like refrigerators and freezers, you have to take the doors.
But most of them have the refrigerator, and some enterprises and so will deal with that before they take it to the dump.
the game cam at the side. off the building.
Well, so threefold, I'll continue to work those two files, and try to give Dave what he needs to move ahead. I'll pick back up my code enforcement section theoretically tomorrow. I'll have a new sheriff and new prosecuting attorney, we'll see what their perspective, I'm not suggesting, for the studio audience, I'm not suggesting the old ones weren't interested. We just have new folk, new administrative approach, now is a wonderful time to pick up this process. and see.
Well, you know, and when we did that with the police department in Oroville, that's basically what happened. We had a new police chief, and he was interested in participating at every level. That's the way it went.
Good, fresh blood, so to speak.
That's right.
We'll see the direction they want to go.
Because he was proud of his community, and he didn't want to see junky stuff there either.
So really all under the banner of code enforcement. Oroville EMS, we I took the addendum, Lean and I talked about the addendum, and I tidied it up just a bit, because you haven't actually signed it yet. You conceptually approved it.
Yes, I've told others that we approved it, or at least,
What you did, your motion was
yeah.
to approve the change in the level of service. And then I drafted the addendum, the discussion that has gone on. I tweaked the language a bit to make it reflective of all of the discussions. I sent it down to Dave. I haven't heard back from him yet. He did review one of the earlier iterations, offered some suggested changes. But it essentially, at the point the commissioners are comfortable, I think this addendum accurately reflects all of the different discussions that you've had.
What was the significant change, or not so significant change?
Yeah, not so significant change. He had some just language changes he wanted to offer up in terms of, I think one was like an and versus a or something, right? Relatively minor stuff. What I changed was, the way it read before, it wasn't absolutely clear that this was an addendum to our agreement with Lifeline, and actually, if you read the agreement, it kind of implies in parts that it's a joint agreement, and technically it's not. There are parts of it where they're
Right.
entwined,
Right.
but they're two separate agreements. We have one
Yes.
with Lifeline, City of Oroville has one with Lifeline. So I tried to tidy up that a little bit with the language.
Do we have a previous addendum?
Yes, you'll recall way back, we did an addendum one that clarified,
That must have been right after we.
that was right after, then it was language.
Can you clarify the titles or something like that?
No, there was language in the agreement that talked about, and I think it was about levy. That Oroville and would do the same thing, but it didn't say each of them had to do the same thing at the same time. I'm kind of butchering the discussion here, but what that addendum did was just tie the two agreements more closely together. So, and I can get you a copy of each one, to double check on that. So, in keeping with that, we're amending the existing contract, I numbered this one addendum two.
Okay. Well, I move to approve addendum to the agreement for emergency medical services. Do we need to go into, actually, we need to go into,
Yep.
yeah.
So I move to adjourn as the Okanogan Board of County Commissioners and reconvene as the Oroville EMS District.
Second motion.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so I move to approve the agreement for emergency medical services in the Oroville response area. It's addendum to the contract with Lifeline.
Second.
Okay, motion second, discussion.
thought I'd share with you, I did a little bit with the two commissioners this morning, that I was contacted by one of the, happened to be Brad Scott.
Okay.
And,
Laney, are you working on that?
I gave him the rundown from the beginning to now. And he explained what he'd heard, and so we have somebody that knows what's going on out there in the rural district, and has offered to, act as a communication piece, if nothing else. And he invited me to go to their fire district get-together, District 11.
Okay.
And I'll do that. I was gonna take a little tour of their firehouse. And then they have, a get-together that evening. I was going to go ahead and speak to them, and it's an opportunity to talk to. Actually, has some profound opinion on the subject
Right.
that I think is important for us.
Yeah, you see where confidentiality?
Yeah. Grant, $750,000.
Yeah.
Should we, adjourn as?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Move to,
We can talk about other.
Well, actually, before you do that,
Yeah.
Commissioner, we did go up and talked, as we reported out, we talked to the Oroville City Council. I, last Friday, met with, and they began to essentially, split up our labors in terms of preparing information for your public hearing at some subsequent date. So he's working on some of the response protocols and things like that, that will take off of the information he's already provided. We'll need to get our annual report that the contract requires him to give us. Then I'll begin to put together all of that in some kind of a presentation to the public to make sure that we're talking about the question of the levy, not campaigning for the levy, plus or minus. And then, and actually meshing fairly smoothly with your discussion of a moment ago, I think that at some point, if a citizens group were to emerge to kind of carry the banner, yea or nay, for this thing, then we'll have to be careful. We're only providing information, not assisting in any campaigning. We would have to be responsible for fundraising and expenditure and things like that. But Lifeline was willing to kind of lead that discussion to make sure that you are kept out, or I, as your extension, are kept out of that kind of campaigning sort of activity. So just for that up to them.
And the question I have, if you know, we can check into it if you don't, is prior to it being on the ballot, is the application of this campaigning a little bit more lenient? It's not on a ballot, the issue is
It is, so long as we keep it in the, essentially the discussion of, do we put it on the ballot or not? I mean, that's what your public hearing would be. You may have already been leaning heavily toward putting it on the ballot, but the subject of our public hearing will be the commissioners.
and we were gonna do that in Oroville?
Well, we haven't necessarily cited that. My suggestion is you do it in Oroville, and I would even suggest you do it as a joint public hearing between you and Oroville City Council.
The evening?
We haven't set the date. You recall when we last chatted about it, we're trying to decide whether to do it early
Oh, yeah, right.
or later. The deal, if you will, was I will get your presentation organized, and at that point, you can take a look at it, see what you think in terms of the best time to do it. If we're going to the November general, obviously, the drop dead date. If we go to the April special, February.
Would we be entertaining having a hearing to decide whether we do go to the April or that November date?
That would be up to you. I mean, if
That's kind of asking that question.
obviously, if we're gonna talk about that, we need to move with some alacrity.
I still think we hold it off till November. I mean, we're gonna spend money and we're not gonna gain anything by pushing it early. The only thing that we could gain is a better acceptance or a better understanding from people as to
Yeah, I was just, that was what I was, yeah, so cause you'd be having a hearing and then you'd be like, well, we're thinking about going to the November ballot, but, based on what we hear, it may drive us to go to the April, I mean, I don't know. It's not gonna help us, I guess that's the main thing, the only thing, the way it would help us is if it didn't pass in April, then you put it on again. I really, in my mind, I think going to November is the thing to do, gives you the time, but you gotta make sure you fully use that time.
That's all I have.
So move to adjourn as Oroville EMS and reconvene as the Okanogan County Commissioners.
Okay, motion taken, all in favor?
Aye.
That is your agenda, commissioners, anything for me?
So, WRIA 48, closed basins, line up with adjudications.
The what? Sorry?
The closed basins are either completely adjudicated, incomplete adjudications, or continuing adjudications.
Okay.
Yep. So it'd be interesting to know in those adjudicated rights, how much of that water is actually being used.
We need to pull some records. See what the results of the adjudications are.
A lot of those were adjudicated in the 20s.
18, 19?
That was, so, then when we were doing watershed planning effort, why, 49, that was just what nobody wanted to see.
There are quite a few in 49 that are adjudicated.
Yeah. Certainly one part,
Smoking was the very first adjudication that they had.
in that adjudication was, Enloe had, river water, right? And, smuggling. I think that, somebody asked me that question.
1,600.
That's for,
770,000 gallons.
that's energy production only, isn't it?
That's why I have posed it to our legislative people, after discussion with the PUD commissioners, that, and I support it, I would hope that the board would support it, but they want to talk to FERC, see if they can leave the dam in place, take that water right, change it to consumptive water to be held within the county. The only fear that they have is that whenever you do that, DOE will want to grab a big piece of it.
If you're lucky enough to be able to do it, you must well give it.
Yeah.
Piece of it, because it's,
Do they want to,
yeah.
do they want to sell it as a water bank?
Well, I think that there'd be all kinds of opportunity there.
Yeah.
I agree. One thing is that I question whether it'd be successful at all because it's right of the river, right, I call it, which means that it's non-consumptive, it's right. Because it would,
Technically, it's de facto in-stream flow.
yes, because if it was right through the dam and they use the water, right,
Yeah.
it's still water,
Yeah,
Water
or speech, geothermal lake effect.
yeah.
We'll start pulling some of these records.
So that,
Because we have
Current as of
legal
06
wells,
is what
but
this
we
says.
really don't have a water right because we.
Yeah.
when you ask DOE, hey, why'd you do this? And they go, we don't know. And then I can get online and go, oh, look, they're all adjudicated, or we're going through adjudication, they match.
Coincidence.
Yeah, it is a huge coincidence. And especially on one of their reports where it says, these ones are adjudicated and then these ones aren't.
Anything for me, Commissioner? See you next year.
See you next year, I'm not gonna talk to you again.
But don't say that, he might be back.
And, yeah,
But I'll have to follow through.
What are you up to? Oh, okay.
So,
I have quite a few items.
did we get that?
Well, I didn't notice that.
Carriage.
on the agenda.